Hi, everybody. This is Karen. Just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the good design elements that I found doing the readings and looking at the video from Aaron During. And I want to talk specifically about poor design elements because I think what happens is that um, essentially that happens sometimes because of restrictions of the platforms we're using, or maybe it has to do with our institution or just because there's an absence of those elements, and then that ends up being poor design. But I just want to talk about that briefly, do a short summary of some of these elements, and then I want to look at some of the sites and some of the blended courses I have, and another course that I planned last year, that I did last year, that has some other different elements so that we can compare. Well, first of all, some elements of good design that I found from the readings, and I think it's very common and a little bit of common sense, is obviously when we're planning and we're determining learning outcomes, adjectives, we have to know who our students are, what they need, um, and what they're like. And based on that, we can make some decisions about planning. Um, Another thing I found was really interesting and I think very true is that we have to allow for certain freedom, especially in online courses and obviously face to face as well. But in online courses, we have to be flexible in regards to the activities, the objectives, the assessment that we've planned, because things can change along the way. And we have a certain compass when we do our planning, we have our objectives and outcomes, but depending on our students, depending on the things that they come up with, their specific needs and their wants, things can change along the way. So this goes along with the next one, where there has to be room to negotiate both assessment and goals, because as students are individuals and they're going to come up with different things, and so uh, there needs to be room to change course. Authentic tasks and appropriate resources and opportunities to collaborate, that came from both Wilson and During. Um, this one, the next one, truly engaging in transformative experiences, solving problems and having real world impact. I think this is really important, but I also think it's sometimes very difficult to do in the classroom. Um, I would agree that it is very important and is something I try to do, authentic tasks, but it's not always the easiest thing. Some other elements of good design, I think if we take into account that we all have certain constraints within our institutions and limitations, and we take that into account when we're designing, things come out better. Another thing is we need to be practice empathy with our learners and consider their time. A lot of these people, especially in online courses, they're working adults. They have other things to do besides the course that they're doing. And we need to, based on this, we should select the content carefully and really separate the chaff from the grain and think about what is most beneficial to them, and think about the cost benefit ratio. Obviously, another thing is providing motivating and variety of resources because learners are different, they have different wants and needs. And then again, getting back to one of the last things that Wilson and all say in their article is that transforming instruction is the instruction which encourages deeply engaging experiences that can potentially transform identities and practices. So these would be all elements of good design. Um, I also wrote down some of the principles from Deering because I couldn't keep them all in my mind. And so he says that transformation happens when you change the way that you think, you act, and you feel about something. And I think this also depends very much on the learner. it also depends on how we motivate and sort of maybe even activate the learner, sort of finding a way into him or her. So a lot of the things that he says in his speech has to do about the learner. So we have to always be thinking about the learner. The learners can be designers. They can cooperate with input. They are the experts on certain things. If we allow them to collaborate, they're going to be able to take part in the conversation and also be part of the story in the self-narrative. He talks about designing experiences and not products. I very much agree with this. Why does this experience matter? Because I think that is something that we remember much longer than anything that we can buy, an experience, a trip, anything that we do that we physically experience with all of our ourself. Building trust that the learner is the most important, and there has to be a commitment, I think, from through the teacher. And so that commitment sort of puts the learner at the center, and that's why where he talks about, especially in online courses, that the first thing we see is design. The first thing that we see is design, and then we have the content, and then the instructor is finally the most important. He talks also about aesthetics, saying that we have to make them want to be there. And I think that's very true because there are many sites and many courses that are just not appealing, and we leave because they're physically not appealing. Talks about TPACK, innovative pedagogy. So we have to use pedagogy really to involve the learner, and this has to, again, goes back to the part about transformational learning and really having a deep impact on the learner. And finally, I think this is a very, very important thing he mentions, is to design as a learner, asking ourselves if we want to be there. And I think that's really goes back to empathy and putting ourselves in the shoes of the learner. So what I want to do here is now I want to go to some of the sites that I have that give support or materials to some of my students. This, for example, this is from an advanced level of English class I have, and here essentially this is not a very aesthetically appealing site. Um, if there, it doesn't allow for interaction or collaboration. There is no discussion. There is no possibility for students to, at least at this site, to contribute with content. This is, again, this is just extra material, more or less, or some of the same material that I use in a face-to-face class. I will say that this is a class where I am not able to determine the content. The content and the objectives are given to me. And so I've had some challenges to make it very, very motivating, although I do look for topics that have some impact in their life, and I try to come up with activities that motivate the students, but this is not an online course. What I am doing this semester, I just started, I just opened an account here at Schoology, and although this is also just, some extra support for my face-to-face course, I do find that it is at least more interactive. It allows me to create activities for the students, and I can do online assessment, and I can add discussions, and in that way students can participate. I don't think that students here can add any material of their own, but it is, at least it is more interactive than the Google Sites, which is, yeah, a much older resource. But thinking back to some of the readings from this week, I think it is very true, and I think During says it as well, is that sometimes we feel constrained by the types of tools that we have available to us when it should really be the other way around. The way that we develop courses has to be, should be focused more on how am I getting this learner to be motivated, and how can I design this experience for the student, so it really matters. Um, the other thing I want to share here, this is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than the Google Sites. However, it's still, I would find it's really very linear, and it is not, doesn't allow for, I would say, a lot of innovation. It's not the most pleasing site, and I wouldn't say, oh yes, I'm dying to be here, but it works. Um, this other site, um, I did this with another colleague from the course, Kate Clements, and this aesthetically is very pleasing. And this is some place that you say, okay, I do want to be here. This looks really interesting, and it has a lot of engaging elements, I would say, because here we have a question: what is it that we're trying to investigate and research? And so what is the mission? So they're going to create a video where they're going to talk about the benefits of humane treatment of animals. And so that is a lot more engaging because it's the focus is on what they're going to do. Um, this is allows for different sorts of resources to be present in a very visual way. Um, this is just a few videos that we've put up here. And then here we have the sort of the didactic or the pedagogical part, where we're telling students what we want them to do. Try and remember a special animal in your life. Here is actually a video of a dog I have locally here. And so it's a cross-cultural sort of approach. So here we have it in English and in Spanish, the story of this dog I have here to the left. And then we have some interviews with experts that we put up here, and then from both the US and Mexico. And then here we're asking them to, okay, you're going to take some notes on these sort of things. And so there's a lot of different resources. And then this one, we're asking them to use Flipgrid. This is kind of exceptional. I would say that, of course, because I have the support from my colleague in the US, I can do this sort of thing. But normally in Mexico, I can't. It's not possible to do these kind of things. So we are very much, many times, constrained by the platform we have or by the technology we have, and we're not able to do things that are so appealing, where students can contribute with their point of view in that such a visual way from a video. And the same thing goes for some of the online learning platforms that I don't have those things available for me. I can't pay for a Ning, the university won't pay for it, so we don't have those things available. Part of this, another thing, is integrating Tandem in a real-time interview or telecollaboration. So this is something that is very motivating for them, and we're going to be doing that this semester. And that, I think, is something that has the potential of being something that would be very transformational. So this kind of sites and this kind of support, technological support, makes it possible for things to be more engaging. But again, this isn't something that is always possible, and it's in sort of the best of all possible worlds.